And I'm going to call the Board of Selectmen to order. And I would also like to call the Economic Development Commission to order. And we have a quorum. And from the two voting members, you could be voting for Fred, and you could be voting for, let's see, who? Yeah. Be fine. All right, do a pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Bob, I'll let you lead off. It's your letter that's more or less initiated this. All right. I can certainly lead it off, and then we can go kind of back and forth a little bit. I'd just like to open it by thanking everybody for coming. That's great to see many faces out there, and we don't usually get that many at the Economic Development Commission. It's not that exciting, but thank you for coming. And I would like maybe if we could introduce the people who are here.
Certainly.
So could we just go around the room and well, you want to know who we are? Whoa, wait a minute now. We're supposed to be able to get out of here quickly in case things get too hot. We can do that.
Come on.
Irene, you can.
Irene Haynes, Economic Development Commission.
I'm Jim Fanema, EDC.
Bob Kasner, I chair it. Emmett Lyman, First Selectman.
Sharon Wheeler, Secretary.
Rob Smith, Selectman.
Don Bergeron, EDC.
Ed Blasher. Eric Hill.
Andrew Tierney, Town Manager, Town of Hebron, and Chairman of the Board of Chatham Health.
You're going to be next, Don.
Oh, I'm gonna be next?
Your day.
Don Mitchell, I'm Director of Health, Chatham Health District.
I'm Jess Stone, President of the East Haddam Business Association.
Lori DeQuilla, I'm the President of East Haddam Ambulance Association.
Zach Jezik.
To be continued.
Go ahead, Steve.
Steve Knock, Chief Sanitarian, Chatham Health District. Jim Ventris, Land Use Administrator.
Thank you. And I'd just like to stress that basically what we're trying to do here is to give you a little idea as to what's going on with the health district, what's right, what's wrong. Certainly going to give out some points that economic development has found over the years that's been going on. And I think that we're trying to see what we can do to have better health services in the town of East Haddam. EDC has been basically discussing the Chatham Health and their performance. And it started really back in 2016. And October 6, 2016, we started discussing the services that were being given by Chatham Health and some of the businesses that have had and shown over time that the performance is not up to what they feel it should be. So it went from October the 6th until December the 6th, and then on that date we basically confirmed that it was asked by the board whether we were too late to do anything. Now this is 2016 to do anything with possibly getting a new proposal for health services. And basically at that time it was confirmed that by that time it would be too late to talk about making any changes in 2016. So now running forward, basically the next time the minutes showed up with discussion of it, or it was on the agenda, was November of 2017. And basically at that time, the representative from Chatham Health had resigned. And at the time, we didn't have anybody in the office as a regular staff person, as we had when Liz Davison was there. She was basically in the office and was there and available to the businesses and to the public. By the time we got to December of 17, it was on our agenda again, and at that time we brought it to the attention of the First Selectmen, and basically Mr. Lyman basically said that he had spoken with Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Tierney regarding concerns about Chatham Health performances, and they both expressed their strong concerns and interest in correcting any problems. I think then basically that went along for a while, and now we've got into April of 2018, and the businesses had again expressed problems and dissatisfaction with Chatham Health District. And Mr. Lyman requested that specific examples be given to him, and Mr. Staley offered to do that and send him some examples of business people around the town who were having problems. In September, we was asked to, the board basically asked to draft a letter to Chatham Health and request their fees and some procedural matters. And by the time we got to October, there was a subcommittee set up, and at that time we decided that we would rather have a meeting with Don Mitchell and basically have a one-on-one, and then we could also request basically some financials, which was always a question out there as to how much money it was costing the town, how much fee income was coming in, and where the fee income was coming from. And we had the meeting with Don, and certainly the subcommittee learned that we were, basically the town of East Haddam was paying a fee of $105,000 a year. That was for the 2018 year. And there was $24,000 collected in service fees from the businesses and landowners of the town of East Haddam. I think that in the meantime, there has been other discussions and other things going on, but it just, what we're trying to do is to show that this has been going on for a period of time, and that it seems like there's been lapses in how the performance is being accepted by the townspeople, particularly the businesses out there. And certainly with, I would say the biggest area that we found was food service. Food service has always been a problem, and I think that it seems like that is an area that needs to take and have a little bit of attention, needs to take and have a better education of the people who have to deal with food service and what to expect and when to expect it, and basically have something so that also from the economic development standpoint that we know what is being expected of our food services, and are we going to inspect them once a quarter, twice a year, once a year? What is the rotation as far as having some inspections in food service? And I think the businesses would like to know that. And I think that also the other thing we've found is consistency. That when you have, over like we've had for these past 3 years, basically we're having different people walking through that office. And that always is more difficult to deal with, rather than if you have one person who's there and we get to know that person, we get to know whatever the hours are going to be and when they're going to be in the office. They're going to be in the office in the mornings and they do their inspections the afternoon. We kind of get a feeling and have some consistency as to how is it going to work, as well as what time and is people going to be in the office. So I'm just going to open up basically with a couple of questions, if it's okay. I'd like to direct them to you, Don, if it's okay. Emma, is that okay if I proceed this way?
I mean, this is going to have to be fairly informal.
Oh, yeah, yes, yeah. And,
Go for it.
and that's, I think, the way we
Yeah.
certainly are going to set this up. I thought we could start off, I could ask a couple of questions. We're going to go around the table, ask a couple of questions. Anybody in the audience who wants to ask a question, we can certainly do that through the chair.
And comments.
Yeah, comments, absolutely. And I'm just going to start off now with the food service. What is the, let's say right now, how often do we inspect our restaurants, our food, grocery stores, whatever, and then we can get into basically the food trucks and that sort of thing. But I think basically with the restaurants and food service.
Food services are inspected based on their state classification, so these come down from the State Department of Public Health. There's Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, Class 4. Class 4 is more your sit-down restaurant, and Class 1 is more like your convenience store, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And their inspectional schedule has been tied to their class. So if it was a Class 1, once a year, 2, twice a year, 3, 3 times a year, 4, 4 times a year. That isn't always possible. There are a large number of food services, and I've talked to directors of health everywhere, all over the state, and they all suffer from the same thing about not necessarily being able to get into a Class 4 4 times a year. On the other hand, we get in there 4 times a year because if we get in 3 times and there's a failure, we need to go back. And those are triggered re-inspections that we have to do. So there can be places that have been inspected 8 times in a year because they've been noted problems, and in protecting public health, we have to go in and make sure those things are fixed. Now, that's under the current classification, and one of the things we've been talking about is that the FDA food code is coming in. It got eased in about a year ago with the temperature requirements. They changed from what the Connecticut requirements were. So we used to say, well, cold food has to be below 45 degrees, now it's 41. Hot food used to have to be above 140, now it's 135. So that was the first phase of the FDA regulations. The state has been having a problem getting their regulation drafted and out. Consequently, they keep putting it off. The last thing that we have heard was that it should be in place January 1st. They finally have some draft regulations that came out this past week. Under the FDA food code, some of these places will be reclassified. In fact, most of them will be. Things that were Class 4 will be called a Class 3. They are going to allow us to inspect those 3 times a year in recognition that's more what they are. Class 4s are going to be things like institutions, schools, convalescent homes, things of that sort. So the classifications are going to change, our fee structure will change accordingly. Pretty much people will, in terms of fees, it'll probably line up pretty close to what their class is now, but they will be reclassified. Jamie Ellis is our food training officer. Under the FDA code, you have to have one, and of all things, Bob, standardization. She has to standardize all the inspectors. So she has to accompany them on a certain number of inspections each year to make sure that they're standardized and that they're seeing things the same way. She is doggedly determined, and she's a very smart young lady, and I think she'll do a great job with this. She's already attended a number of FDA conferences. She's also met with NACHO representatives, National Association of County and City Health Officials. So she's really top-notch on this, and she's worked on getting us some grants in that regard too, for training and education. And we've already had discussions with our health educator, and both Jamie and our health educator, Nancy McAuliffe, plan on offering training to our food service establishments. We want to be able to do that more. It's always something that we have offered training in the past. Serve Safe training will be offered again. So there will be more on that.
I think that, now do you have somebody who just does food service inspections?
Right now, it's pretty much Jamie's exclusive. I'm not going to say she does only food service, because she can also go out on complaints. She could go out on a simple inspection for septic, but we try to keep those away from her and let her concentrate in that field of expertise. Mm-hmm. We also have a new sanitarian coming on board in December who is very strong in food service inspection. So between the two of them, we hope to get a much more robust food program.
Okay. Now, Jamie she covers the 5 towns at Chatham Health, all their towns.
All 6.
Yeah.
Don't get ahead of
Oh, okay.
So that's, yes, she does them everywhere, but we also have other inspectors that are doing food service inspection. So pretty much everybody's food service certified. Our public health nurse is also food service certified and can jump in a pinch. Our health educator is food service certified and can jump in a pinch. I am food service certified. I have to go through all the processes that everyone else does. Right now, because of the FDA code, we have some 30-something courses we each have to take. So they're required. The FDA food code is very specific.
Could I just touch on the food trucks? The food trucks have always been a source of a problem as far as getting them basically certified, because they're a 1 day or a 2 day deal. And if they're working with, quite often with a nonprofit or something, we're not dealing with a whole big amount of income here. And we had asked about having something so that if a food truck A gets approved by Chatham Health, that will take care of the whole Chatham Health district. It does.
It already does, and it has for some time. We, our food trucks get inspected when they're coming on board. So if somebody doesn't yet have a food truck, we have, or if they're just getting one, we have something called food service plan review. We do it for all food services that are coming up. And we do a plan review and we let them know if they need anything. So for example, we'll have a food truck that somebody's buying it down in North Carolina. They have all the specs on it and everything, and we said, beautiful, that's got everything. And often that's just what they are. They're all set to go. Others, though, it's like they didn't really think of anything here. There's no hand sink in here. There's no way to wash anything. And I know people say, well, you take it home and wash it. Well, that's not how it's supposed to work. And when we do license a food truck, it is licensed for all 6 towns for a year. So once they have that license, they don't have to go get a license to operate anywhere within Chatham Health. They've got it for a year.
Okay. Has there been ever any talk of doing it, let's say, as a multiple of towns that it could work for? Obviously, they don't just stay in Chatham's district. They are going to be in probably anywhere from New Haven to Stonington.
I think I would right now defer that. There was a meeting just recently. Steve, maybe you could just mention that.
Yeah, we just recently participated in a meeting with several other health departments to try and standardize this. The other health departments were Ledgely, Uncas, Northeast District, Eastern Highlands, and North Central. And one of the questions that did come up for the group to think about was food trucks that cross jurisdictions. Food trucks were something we want to standardize, farmers markets, and temporary events. So the thought was with those health departments, that's like almost 80% of Eastern Connecticut, to try and standardize forms and everything else. So we can try and make it easier for people that cross jurisdictional lines.
So this is something that's in the works that
This is
we.
something that's in the works with all the different, as I said, it was Ledgely, Uncas, Chatham, Eastern Highlands, Northeast, and North Central. And food trucks, temporary events, and farmers markets are right now what we want to work on in the winter.
That would be a great thing to basically have some kind of an agreement, because it would make it so much easier for the businesses that bring in these food trucks for the 2-day weekends. I mean, we have our fall weekend, and basically we have food trucks around town.
And it makes it easier for us too.
Right.
So it makes it easier for everybody all around.
Yeah. So if we could obviously have something like what you're working on, that would be great.
And that is really just one of the starts. We figure that we're going to use this for other areas of environmental health, to try and standardize things. Because most of the people we deal with cross jurisdictional lines.
Yes, right. And I mean, basically, we're going to pull them out of, whether they're coming out of New Haven or they're coming out of Stonington or they're coming out of Hartford. Basically, they're gonna cover this whole area and, in order to keep themselves busy. And, so I think anything we can standardize and have one certificate that covers them, and that makes it easier for like our businesses, then they know when they hit, you know, they don't have to worry about the health director coming down and approving this one food service, which we want to get away from. You know, you don't want to do that on a Friday afternoon, and we want to make sure that they can get started on Saturday morning at 7 o'clock to start serving coffees. And so I think that that would be a great help for all of us.
So it has started, and
This is
probably
direction.
together again in December.
That's the direction we're going, and it starts with them agreeing that, you know, okay, let's make our forms all similar so that people can understand this was the form I did here, it's similar here. Some of the other agreements to get it across jurisdictional lines, probably gonna be harder to do, but it is something that we're looking at that we would like to do. And as Steve said, with other things too, like we have been required for some time to have a salon regulation because they should be inspected for health reasons. And what we find is that every single district has a different regulation. These are things that perhaps the state could have seized onto and said, thou shalt do it this way, but they didn't. So we're looking at that. We're trying not to reinvent the wheel on everything. And I think the more standardized they get, the better it is for the residents of the state in general.
And also for the residents out there and the businesses out there, so that they know, because, you know, they don't just stay in one town either, they move too. And so once you get certified, you'd like to be certified, period. And is there any thought of any classes or anything as far as some of the districts have given lead abatement classes, so that you could, so contractors are, you know, obviously having to get certified for any time they touch one of these 1850 houses that have lead paint on it. And
There have been discussions about it. I'll tell you, there's a couple of things that happened. The state Department of Public Health cut back on lead funding. So they used to provide us a certain amount of lead funding, and they would always have recommended projects for us. We tried to do things that would do the most good, come up with brochures. We came up with brochures that could go into offices of OBGYNs so that pregnant mothers could learn about lead before it was a problem for them. So we've worked on things of that sort. We have talked about these classes. These classes were offered in abundance all over the place, and we heard a lot of people were not getting anybody to them because there was just such a flood of them. So are they a good thing to have? Yeah, they can be held. So far in the recent past, I haven't seen a huge demand for it. And yet I see a need for it because we do have a lot of contractors that touch things. We've had lead poisoning cases where a contractor didn't know what they were doing and they touched things they should never have touched. But that's another aside I would have you understand, is that the health district is involved in lead poisoning cases. That we do go out and we do epidemiological investigations on properties. Our nurse will follow up a whole series of questions with the family. Meantime, we will end up collecting soil, water, dust, possibly what we call XRF, X-ray fluorescence readings of the home to find out where the lead is. And recently we just had one with a toy, and the toy was like it was pure lead that a child was playing with all the time, and they became poisoned. We have worked on a number of lead cases, and we've closed out some lead cases here in East Haven.
yeah. Steve, did you have a comment?
Yeah, it's not about lead, but it addresses providing something to the community, and reached out to the private drinking water section at DPH, and they've agreed to hold informational sessions for people regarding private drinking water and treatment systems, and come here to East Haven and do it next year.
Mm-hmm. Great, okay. And
So, and I imagine that's the type of thing that you want us to look forward to providing more, and
I think we're looking to try and have a relationship between our contractors, and not just regulatory, but also something where we want to bring them into being something friendly, something that they're going to get out of working with Chatham Health District. And if a class on lead was being offered, I mean, obviously your painters and your GCs and that kind of a contractor, which that's East Haddam. I mean, you know, we're basically, there's a lot of contractors out there. A lot of them deal with the dirt, but some of them deal with painting up the walls too. And so I think that it would be a good PR for Chatham Health to offer something like that. Also for realtors to basically get a course in the basics. You know, what's a B100? What does it mean? And so when they have a client out there, they can say, well, you know, you're going to have to go to the health district to learn what this is all about. And so that, I think so we get the information that's correct. And I think that, again, we're a town, it's a residential town. So, you know, we've got, there's realtors out there, and I think they would benefit from this. And certainly I've seen it down on the shoreline where they have had it. And there's people who show up and go. And I think it's a good way in which to invite the public and invite the realtors in and become a part of and know a little bit more about wells and know a little bit more about lead in the, and of course water is huge today. And what's the arsenic in the water? You know, is this you know, it's kind of like another one of those new things out there. And what happens if there's arsenic in the water? And you know, what can you do? And I think giving them a little bit of knowledge that comes from professionals would probably go a long way towards making sure the information that gets out into the public is accurate rather than
It hasn't been in the past like year or two, but we had offered a program on radon-resistant new construction back when it wasn't required by the state building code. It was just a good idea. We have about 20,000 people a year in the US that die of lung cancer related to radon. And if you did that just by population, it came out maybe about 200 in Connecticut. We offered training on how to do radon-resistant construction because it's so easy, and we offered it for building officials and contractors. You may be surprised at the time, the answer was, this is easy, we'll do it as soon as it's required. And, but it is now required, it's part of the building code now. But I do understand, and we do offer training like that, and you know, certainly if you guys wanted to see lead training, that happen. There's a number of trainings that we can offer. The realty one is always one that's important, just on all of the environmental topics, because so many of them don't really have a grasp on it, and it becomes critical mass right before the closing.
Yeah. And I think
On behalf of the environmental staff, we would love to do more education instead of people just thinking of us as regulators. Because that's only one facet of it, but we would prefer to be educators, and regulators are only when things break down. So it's almost like preventative medicine education.
yes. And it's very helpful for, I don't care whether it's the contractors or whatever, it's helpful for them to get those ideas. And even like on the radon, I remember probably 3-4 years ago, you had brochures out in the office on what to do for that. And it did. It was a case where it was very inexpensive when it was new construction. It was a lot more expensive when you had to go chop up that floor and get basically some ventilation in that floor. And so,
Bob,
yes.
regarding, and I believe realtors have to have a certain number of education units every year.
Right, yes.
And it seems to me that some of this training should be as part of their education units that they can receive. And not just, I understand trying to get interaction with your local health district, but I think some of these things are important for them through whatever mechanism they have to get that training, whether it's statewide training, I mean, through the state, or however, that.
They
that
operate within boards of realty.
Right.
Not to interrupt you.
Yes.
That's one place where we could reach them through
Mhm.
those realty boards and ask if they could get credit if we taught something for a couple hours. I think it's a great idea.
I'm just gonna take and let a little more question. Irene,
John,
would
when we
you?
met with you earlier in the fall, we talked about Chatham Health and the struggles that you guys have been having in regards to personnel, and that there just hasn't been, you've had trouble getting people out there. We've been, the Chatham Health District has been very spotty this last year as far as people here being able to, meet with our contractors to get to their deadlines. And obviously, we talked about inspections already. So where is Chatham Health now? I mean, what can we expect if we continue with Chatham Health? What is the, what can you promise that, we're paying the same amount we paid last year, but we don't have the service that we had. So is this beneficial to our town or not? And if it's not, what are you doing to remedy that?
I think there's one piece of information that was out there that is not correct. You have not had a full-time sanitarian. The whole time Liz was here, I mean, from the beginning, she was full-time, and then when she went out on maternity leave and she came back, she was pretty much a 3-day-a-week person. And when you have a sanitarian in your town, that's not the only sanitarian that works here. We circulate people in. There could be somebody in the office, there could be 2 people in the field. There was time here a couple weeks ago where we had people working here, but we also had a flu clinic going on, where there were 2 staff members here and 147 flu vaccinations were done. So it's not just what you're seeing in the office, but in terms of what you're asking, we did get a person. This is not unusual right now to have problems getting employees. While we were searching, there were 8 departments that were looking for sanitarians. That's why we're relying on the Zach Jessicks of the world to get in here and get in the workforce. There just aren't that many sanitarians. Most of them are aging out. They're mostly in the 50s and 60s now. Not a lot of people that are getting into the field. We don't know why, but we'd like to think we're even trying to work on that. I've had a meeting with the Natural Resources Department up at UConn and said, we don't have anybody that's coming out of school that can help us read soils to do anything with septic systems. Where are we going to get our qualified people from? And we had a great discussion. And Dr. Jason Vakun up there said, you know what, I think we could offer a minor in environmental health, and maybe we could start creating some of those people for you. So I find that to be exciting, and I've always been a proponent of workforce development. It's not easy trying to get people when there aren't people. And what's happening is health departments are pretty much poaching from each other at this point. That's fine to a certain degree, but not when there's enough of a shortage that, take here, go there, and everybody's just moving around for a couple $1,000s here and there. Is it gonna push the salaries for sanitarians up? Without a doubt, it will. So that's gonna be not just for our department, that will be probably for every department, just because there aren't people. But we do have a mixture of people too, and as I told you, we have, in terms of sanitarians, we offer more of them than does Connecticut River area. We do have a public health nurse, we do have a health educator, we've got an office manager who's also our bookkeeper, we have an administrative assistant, a director, and we have some contract people. So we're always looking to be more fully staffed within financial parameters, but that's really not any different from us than others. We are more financially healthy now than we were 3 years ago.
Yeah, did you
I have a couple of questions. What is the document that defines the scope of work of Chatham Health Services? I have not seen it, so I don't know what it is.
That's fair enough, and I guess I would have to say that in my time, my tenure, I haven't really had to go dig that out, but I'd be happy to dig out what it is. Basically, it's
Well, do we
providing
have a
the public
contract
health
with
services.
Chatham Health? And does that have a scope of work?
It's providing the public health services for the town. of
That's all it
East Hampton.
says.
I mean, I can see what it has in there, but I will assure you, you're not getting shorted on service.
The gentleman in the back has.
Yeah, and, I mean, it doesn't quite answer your question, but recently in town of Hebron, I participated in what they call We Are Hebron. All the different departments did a presentation on the services that they provide to the community. And we'd be willing to do that presentation down here to show you what the scope of services were. Because most people think of us, you know, as sewer, water, and food. They don't know that we get into housing complaints and different state agencies that we deal with, such as DSF and Protective Services. So I think Andy will tell you that program went over really well in Hebron, and we were talking about having something like that in individual towns so that people knew exactly what it is that we do. And I sort of want to go back to your question as far as the services. The new sanitarian who's going to be starting, what to me makes her a bit unique is this is somebody that we went after instead of just having somebody apply to us and hire. This was somebody who we knew was good, and we went and asked her to come and work for us. So you'll see a real professional person when you come here. It wasn't just, we got an application, we hired someone. This was somebody we actively went out. And that makes a difference in an employee when you go after somebody and they come to work.
Andy?
Yeah, and we're here to answer your questions. We're not here to tell East Haddam what to do. As the chairman of the board, with the 6 towns, I overview all the towns. And East Haddam has had a problem most recently with the person leaving. We did advertise for that position and we didn't get anybody that applied. So we re-advertised and we got this person. But overall, with the 6 towns in the district, we've been faring pretty well. We're human beings. If you get to us, I know you've met with Don and with Steve. Most recently, I've met with Emmett myself, with some of these concerns. We work for you. We're here to listen. We're here to comply. We want you to stay within the district. This is a regionalization of the towns that you're one of the original ones that formed this. I think everything's fixable, but it's got to get to the top. It's a good time to introduce what we're doing. We got a whole reorganizational situation going on with the district. Don is going to retire, but prior to doing that, he's going to go back into field, so you're going to have another sanitarian. We're actively seeking a new director. We're going to give them marching orders with a contract and what the towns expect. You've got a voice at the table every month. We've got a meeting tomorrow. So if as soon as we hear there's issues, we're not going to combat you. We're going to say, hey, we need East Haddam. We got to take care of those people. And earlier you brought up the food service. I thought we, for the most part, have nipped that in the bud. I know that was a concern, but is that still going on? I thought we had that.
There's always some contention with food service. There's always some contention between the health department and the regulated bodies. We have made it our general policy that we're not looking for the confrontation, we're looking for the compliance. Is that always easy? No. There are, believe it or not, business people that don't want to see us.
Gee, that's surprising.
Well, now we
We
got.
realize that we got some issues. We're not here to come in and say we don't.
No.
But we want to work together, and Emmett is your voice there for the town of East Haddam, and rightfully so. I'm the voice for Hebron. We have lead in our water at our schools. We're going through a major repair, and it's learn as you go, and Chatham Health has been very involved in that.
We are in many things. I mean, in preparation tonight, I just kind of called a couple of people and said, been satisfied with our services, would you please give a letter of support? And we've had a couple of those. I don't know if you received them or not.
I've got a number here.
Okay, so.
We've done some good things, but as the chairman, I hear it's everybody's turn in the seat. And I don't mean you deserve a turn, it just happens that way. East Hampton has their growing pains. I think Bob probably echoes down here where you probably hear some of those. Colchester had some pains. We extinguish those. East Hampton is staying with us, they know what we're doing, we're moving forward. Is there situations we have to address and do better? Yes, we all agree to that. When Emmett was a representative for East Hampton, I decided that I would step up and take over this organization as a chairperson. All the 6 towns said we would stay and would work together to make that happen. So to be here tonight, I appreciate it. The building is beautiful. I went to school there and haven't seen it. But we're here to listen and to be cooperative. We need you as a regionalization. If East Hampton were to pull out, it would affect the other mutual aid towns in a bunch of different ways. It might be the end of the health district, and then every town's scrambling. And not every town that's in this district has an easy move. I do. It doesn't affect Hebron. I couldn't go where Mark Walters is, and that's a good health district as well. But with that being said, I think Portland is in a situation, East Hampton is in a tough situation. Colchester could probably go, I don't know, but, so we wanna make this work. We hear you, we're human beings, we wanna do what's gonna make you guys stay in the district. We cross over. You might not have somebody in the office, but if Bob Kazner or Jimmy Curtin call up and need an inspection. When we started this, I had Steve, the head sanitarian, full-time. So if anybody lost, it was the town of Hebron. I had him full-time, 40 hours a week, at every staff meeting. Maybe he likes it better now, not dealing with me, but he's down here. And that's what the district's about, is willing to move people where they're needed. It's not so much that they're just in the office. And Emmett and I had talked, there's been some reductions in the town of East Hampton staffing in that office as well. So that might be a little bit of a crossover. But in no way is it a criticism. We'll do what we can, but at the same time, we're still trying to keep that per capita cost down. Give you the service. We're open to doing classes. I mean, we're doing a lot of stuff in a lot of the other towns, but we're more than welcome to come down here and do that.
Well, hopefully, I mean, you can get grants to pay
Absolutely.
for it. I mean, that's the idea. I mean, but somebody has to go out and get the grant, and then offer whatever, classes the communities may want. I think that, this particular community, I think is certainly very, since it's residential, we're going to basically be more on the residential side. So it's the contractors and the realtors. And I think that would also give us a good taste as to what the participation would be if we did offer something. And if we only have 2 people show up, then, we know that that's a waste of resources and a waste of time. But if you have 20 people show up, then you'll say, well, that was worthwhile then to get that information out. Because obviously, at the coffee shop tomorrow, you'll hear about whatever went on at the meeting.
Right.
And so, it's not only that one person who was at the meeting, it's the other 2 people who were there having coffee with tomorrow morning, which helps. And I certainly appreciate you being here, Andy, because I think that a lot of this goes to the top too. It goes to the top. As the director, I think that, Don was always an interim kind of director here. And I think that, or that's what I understood when he was.
The title ended after a few months. I thought I was the director this whole time.
Well, you certainly are. But I think that it's one of those things where we thought that there was going to be a new person coming into that position.
We definitely had some growing pains. We all got together as the heads of the towns, decided we would try to make this work. We are in good financial stability now. We have some good long-term employees with good credentials. We did have a problem with some of our people leaving. You felt that. We hear you. We've moved some things around. We've hired some new people. Like I said, the new one's coming on board in December. Hopefully the transition with Don going back into the field will fill all those loopholes. And then we're gonna have a director with Emmett's input on guidance on how we proceed. It's municipal government. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not like Kazner Construction. You get it done.
But no, I think that it's certainly, I mean, obviously now we're talking about having 2 sanitarians who would actually be in the field.
In addition,
Yeah, and I mean, that's
one's a
huge.
replacement of the one that left, but then Don.
Yes, but I think it's also a case where, obviously these are very strong people you have coming on. So, yeah. Oh.
So, for optimal staffing, Andy and Don, are you going to be getting there with you coming back into the field a new director and the new sanitarian, or are you still gonna be looking for additional people?
I think we'll be fairly well staffed at that point. There's always change in health, and we know that there's gonna be, we look at some of our other programs. I don't know if you're all aware that you guys through us get your Everbridge emergency preparedness system, so that you can do call downs and the like in the event of emergency. There's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of things you get that you don't see, but to the degree that we can smooth out the bumps in delivery of service, we're always looking to do that. Would we always like more people? Sure. But we have to work within the fiscal constraints.
Obviously, so you think that with the staffing that you have proposed now,
Yeah.
you're gonna be comfortable, being able to handle
I believe so, yeah.
everything that's on your plate now, unbeknownst what, you know, the state may throw at you in the future or whatever, but as of right now, you're gonna, or in the near future, you'll be well enough staffed to handle all your responsibilities.
Yes, and I mean, in one way, we really are there. We're getting the work done. It's getting done timely. So what we're looking at in the increased staffing here is just improvement.
And I think that's the issue here, is that they're looking for improved services.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. We're trying to watch costs. We weren't getting a lot of people filling out applications, so we were hiring people that we had to train. As soon as they get trained, they would leave. So it wasn't working. We realized that, and that's part of the problem here today. Now we hire trained people. This person that's coming on has a lot of years of service. There'll still be a little bit of training with the district. And Don's a senior, staff person already, so with adding him to the new person, that'll be more than we've ever had as far as staffing goes. And we're gonna try to do that within the same per capita cost to the towns. So it's a catch-22. If you want the service, we gotta pay a little bit more money. We gotta bring the salaries up, right, Steve? I mean, that's why we're losing people.
Boy, we got an instant affirmative on that one.
You get some good people,
Steve's
you train
comfortable
them,
with
and
that.
they get poached to another district that offer them, we have a very good benefits package, but if you lay it down to the hourly rates, we're not the top.
I think that maybe I'd like to address one thing with that. With some of the other towns, I mean, like Steve, he's Hebron, and that's kind of his base. And we haven't had anybody in East Haddam with a base. Is that something that the board would be looking at, is basically having one of your sanitarians be based out of this office?
I'll refer that back to you, but I'm gonna tell you, as soon as we joined this district, I lost Steve.
Oh,
I
okay.
have a 40-hour-a-week guy, and I think I see him twice a week. And that's, if that's all he's needed over there, he's out servicing the district or training some of the other ones. So I just wanna make sure that's clear, but then I'll let these guys answer
Well,
that
I'll
question.
tell you that Liz Davidson was your base,
Yes.
but it was pretty much 3 days a week for a
Yes.
very long time.
Right, and I think that, the flow seemed to be okay.
Yep.
I think when Liz was here, I could see the movement of paper. The paper seemed to get moved around. And so I think that probably 3 days a week, depending obviously how much work comes in, how many applications. It was quite of a lull. We didn't have much going on. I mean, it was like, a building permit was like golden if we saw somebody come in and say, we want to build something.
We see that ebb and flow with the towns. Some towns get hot, other towns get cool.
Well, we warmed up a little bit. I mean, I think we're seeing definitely.
So Liz, because of her change in where she resides, is now Portland, and that's her base 3 days a week. When I step down, I'm intending to make this my base. Doesn't mean I'm gonna sit here all the time.
No.
We're gonna do the work inside and out, but that's the idea behind it. This whole transition, I don't want you to get the wrong idea about it. It is a transition. I'm not getting any younger. I still can do this work and I still have a lot to give.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of a director, it's a good time to get somebody in so that if they have any questions, I can be overlapping with them.
Yes.
But it's all toward building, and hey, if I love this town, who knows, maybe I'll never retire.
Well, we'd be very happy with that, Don. You have a very good reputation out there in the field, and the contractors all have a great deal of respect for you.
What we're trying to say is that this transition that we're aiming for is to be orderly. It's to put things in a good position for the future going forward.
Jimmy, you got something there?
Well, one of the things people don't see from my end, and nobody asked until now, is that, from the land use office, other than that temporary blip with the employment, and the lack of, that's gone now, we also keep a good track of who started the project. So to me, it doesn't matter, they're all professionals. So if Steve started a project, well then we kept on forwarding that information to him as it was submitted. So that even though you don't see somebody, that communication's still there because we've been working hand in hand. So if a project starts, Steve's reviewing it, they submit additional information, we PDF and send it out. So it's not like it just got lost and sits there. Since, that person's left, shall not be named, things have been working fine because we keep on track on who started it. And as long as we have people processing stuff, that's, I understand, Bob, you like to see a base in the same person, but it's the same stuff. It's the public health code. It's, it's the same math. It's the same answer, as to what's going on there. But what you don't want to see is 3 people working on the same project. So what we've done is made sure that it has that continuum. That if Jim started it, Jim gets it. If Steve starts, Steve gets it. Liz gets it. So even if there is somebody coming and doing substitute teaching for the day, they're going to get continuing on. So we've been keeping an eye on that, and it's working. You're right. You need to have somebody there, and we've had that. So no one asked me about that beforehand, but we had that little low. We're done with that now. That's all over.
This must be why Antonella Daha, that works at DEEP, told me the other day that Jim is somebody she will never allow to retire.
Yeah, right. She's got the same pact with me, so she can't retire either.
Hang on to him.
She's the only one up there right now, isn't she?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a comment, well, a couple of comments. So I am the president of the Business Association, so in that capacity, I represent local businesses in East Haddam and beyond East Haddam. In addition, I own CSF Community Markets, which organizes a lot of the community events, over 300 per year, and represent lots and lots of vendors, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, who sometimes have to interact with the health district, including, just as a market master, wearing that hat as well. I have had plenty of interactions with different people who have come through to do inspections for the vendors and then come back and report to me, whether it's an event like Celebrate East Haddam or whether it's the East Haddam Farmers Market. And so with these experiences over a really long period of time, I think it's going to be 10 years, almost 9 to 10 years for those markets that are local. Everyone has varying comments and concerns, and sometimes, positive things to report and sometimes negative things to report about their experiences with various member town, staff from Chatham Health. And so I guess where I stand is, even though Bob has rightfully said that we're a community of residences, we also have all of these events, and not just the ones that I organize, but events that lots of people organize, like community go-getters, doers. Things that happen in this town happen because some volunteer in the distance is organizing them. And that volunteer may not always be able to keep up with what's happening with the health district. And so it's very important that that person representing that event has the knowledge firsthand and has a working relationship, which I personally have tried to establish with the health district. I've had varying results. I've had some really great people in my corner that I have been very comfortable meeting with every single year. But on the other side, I've heard a lot of business owners and vendors, so to speak. Sometimes that is the same and sometimes it is not. Sometimes vendors are not business owners, but oftentimes they are. And I have received feedback that is contrary to my own experiences. And so I have tried to bridge that gap, which I think is wide, and work with each person as they come and then go, and then try to catch up to what's happening. And it's really complicated to keep up with. from the outside, never mind from the inside. And I have also offered to come to the health district offices and meet in the wintertime so that we can establish, the set of parameters that we're working with for the following year. I've even invited the health district to come to my farm or to wherever we're meeting as vendors. I've organized vendor meetings so that they can become educated on what's happening now. What are the fees, addressing all of the concerns and fears and questions that all of these vendors and businesses have, and have had mixed results as well. So I know that you guys have experienced a ton of change, still are in that period of transition and not really quite there yet. However, I'd like to be able to provide, in an educated way, information and resources to my business owners and vendors who really need this to do it right. I completely agree with what you said, Steve, about the preventative medicine. It's very important that the health district is proactive and not necessarily hand-holding and babysitting. I'm not referring to that. I mean, I think it's definitely upon each business owner's responsibility to take responsibility and do their best to learn, but there are so many who have no clue what they're supposed to do or how they're supposed to do it. And when it changes often, whether it's the fee or the application not being up to date or some piece of information, just makes it difficult for them to do what they need to do and what they thought they needed to do change. So suddenly they're not meeting the parameters and they're getting a lot of flack. So to make this easier for everyone is the goal. It would be, like you said, easier for you guys, and it would be easier for the vendors and businesses that I represent if we could have these events, right? And so again, I'm happy to meet with you. I'm happy to discuss those concerns like over a session in the wintertime when I have a little bit more flexibility in my schedule.
Sure.
But I think it's absolutely crucial that the health district that we work with ultimately as a town has the best interests of the business owners and vendors in mind. It benefits everyone. And I do not feel that, in representing everyone, that we've been able to do that effectively. And to do that effectively, I think it requires us to sit at the same table and have a session and figure out what it is that we're expecting and what it is that we need to be able to run these community events.
There isn't anything that you're saying that I disagree with. And I have heard much about you, that you've facilitated and smoothed things over in a number of cases where things were tense. So I know your job isn't easy. I am not somebody who has been heavily on the food service end of things. I think that that's one of the harder jobs. That's why when I see Jamie and now Melissa that are going to be working on that, I think we're in good hands. But I think that what you're proposing would be a great idea to see if we can start making things easier to understand. And then if we have to have, meetings with groups, let's do it.
Yeah, I know that the challenge, I can see your perspective as well as, you guys have oftentimes these events and these programs and activities and markets are all outside your 9 to 5 business hours. There's a little overlap sometimes, but oftentimes they're on the weekend.
They are.
Oftentimes they're after 5 o'clock and it's really hard to get from A to B and make it in time and do it effectively. And so, there's sometimes the communication drops or, it's hard for even just the member towns to communicate about where they've been and what they've done. And sometimes there's 2 and 3 and 6 emails plus like 3 or 4 phone calls to give the same answer. And so, and to make sure it gets to the right person and then that person doesn't get it to the other. And so it is a little bit tricky, to say the least.
It is.
I think it's a challenge for you guys as much as it is for us.
When we have to, do something on after hours or weekend, then we're talking about, either paying our contract people or then it's getting one of our full-timers and either allowing them comp time or to be paid overtime to do it.
Right.
I have stated for the record about everywhere I could state it, that in the past, I want to say 5 years, there isn't anything that happens in the state of Connecticut anymore that people don't serve food.
Right.
I swear it used to
Food or
be,
alcohol or both.
baseball tournaments, now I think it's baseball
That's what brings
practice.
people in.
Everything.
Everybody wants to serve food everywhere, and some of the stuff we would just assume, and we're taking some leads from the state on where we're gonna be able to say, okay, we're not gonna be able to help in certain situations. There might be situations come the future where something is labeled as an event that this is not health department inspected just because we can't. But
I have
in
some
the
creative
meantime,
ideas
what
about
we
it.
wanna do is keep it as safe for everybody as possible, and I have a colleague that's up in the town of Portland, and he used to tease me all the time. I'd be coming into the office, he'd go, hey, I wanna talk to you about the sushi I'm serving this weekend.
So do you see common problems or repetitive problems at your events or complaints coming in that the vendors are often frequently have issues with?
Don, can I jump in?
No.
I didn't know if he was asking me or asking.
Either or, I don't care, but I guess Andy's gonna
Being
answer.
the chairman and having 6 towns, all of a sudden it's like the bat phone. You could be anywhere outside of work hours and the phone will ring. We have a gelato salesman that's used to selling it in Middletown, and their health district's fine with certain things. He signs up to go to Old Home Day in East Hampton. They got a space in the middle of their event, and all of a sudden now he can't proceed because he didn't deal with the health district at all. But we're not that being mean with the bat to hit him over the head. We said, we let you go last year and said, make sure you don't do this again. And he did it again. So now the phone's ringing, the first selectman, the whole council, the health district, Don, they even sent the police after us to find us to answer the questions.
That was
So-
the day I went home early because I was sick and I.
Right, so
woken
not to
up
tell
in
war
South Street
stories.
By the Glastonbury police.
Right, not to tell war stories, but as Steve said earlier, with all the districts getting together, especially with these farmers markets and these food trucks, every health district has a little bit different regulation on what they're looking for, so the consistency would help, because you have food trucks over at Coventry or down in Chester, and then they come here and we're different, or they're different. But that's what we're facing. And 90% of the people are good. They come in, they do it when they're supposed to, they meet the deadline, and then you're gonna get, out of all of them, you're gonna get one farmer, what do they call it, the farm market? Farm master? or-
Market master.
Market master. We got one that totally refuses to deal with the regulations. And we're picking on them. We get another one with a farm that's not even recognized by the agriculture. We're not mean to them. We try to work through it, but some people you're just doing
Right,
your
and
best.
I think the challenge for you guys and for also for the people running markets, especially as long as I have, is that you have, essentially you existed long before the markets did. But on the other hand, the markets existed before you started regulating them. And so that's where you're running into that issue and that stubbornness. Because a lot of people are not willing to conform, whether it's the Department of Agriculture for the state of Connecticut, or whether it's the Chatham Health District or any other district trying to regulate a market that they ran and organized in their own mind well before you came along. And so for them, it's difficult to make that change, because I do talk with market masters all over the state. I feel like health districts should do the exact same thing. It sounds like you do that once in a while, but it would be awesome if, as a state of health districts, everybody could be on the same page, whether it's application and having an understandable form that everyone gets. I've worked with Liz on rewriting that whole thing, I don't know how many times. It's still not there yet. We still have work to do, but we make this gradual change, so meeting.
You're right, and Bob's right. It's the education. We're willing to do that. Like I said, we're not here to tell war stories, but you guys know what goes on in the district. We get the Hebron Fair. That's huge. Steve, I brought Steve to a meeting for the Hebron Maple Fest. I'm only speaking to this because these are things that happen in my town. He got accused of shutting the Girl Scouts down for selling cookies for the vets. That never happened. Never happened. He's sitting there looking at me like, I didn't shut anybody down.
He's that mean, huh?
They were really upset with him. It was almost a confrontational meeting. I'm like, I don't know where you heard it. We didn't never shut anybody down. So
That was the first we heard of it.
yeah, so we're trying. We try to always keep our composure. We're not mean to people.
No, I'm gonna be really honest, you guys have had people in the past who've been extremely rude and condescending to vendors. I'm just telling you that, that's free
Absolutely.
feedback I've seen and heard.
Right. We've
Now,
had
not
some.
pinpointing anyone, because
yeah.
I've also worked with some really fantastic
I
people.
agree. We've had some
I
personnel
personally
changes.
haven't had a problem with anyone.
Yeah.
But I know that my business owners and vendors have, and I've heard some of it. And
Sure.
it's just, again, it could be lack of training, maybe not enough, like you guys said, you're bringing somebody in brand new who needs to be trained. Maybe they're just not the right customer service oriented person with the right purpose in mind.
We'll
The
take
goal
that.
is A, to help them,
Yep.
give them the tools and resources they need, and then B, to regulate them.
Sure.
you know, so the way I see that is it can be done.
Yep.
And I think we just need to develop a mutual respect for each other's purpose.
Andy or Don, could you tell me why the individual health districts, or there isn't a unified standards across the state?
I can answer that quickly. Yankee ingenuity, Connecticut.
Or
The state would like
lack
to
of
see,
it.
the state would like to see that, but there's some health districts out there that own their own buildings, they own a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of health directors, so they really didn't talk to the health departments when they threw this consolidation out a year or so ago, and it created a political ripple, and people were showing up in droves up to Hartford and saying, you didn't involve us. Some legislator threw it out there, thought it'd be a good idea to consolidate, and there was a lot of unanswered questions, so the commissioner backed off on that. At least that's my take on it. But the state right now is really looking at onesies and twosies. They really don't like Killingworth. They don't want you out there with your sanitarian, and then you have to hire a director of health or a doctor to pick that up. If you were to put those two salaries together, you're right where you are with the Chatham Health District with the per capita.
Yeah.
So they're getting rid of the onesies or the twosies. They want districts, and I think you're gonna see, Don, you can step in, I think you're gonna see even districts, I guess, consolidate at some point.
But there will be consolidation when the Commissioner of Health didn't get what he was looking for there, which was anywhere from 5 to 8 districts. That kind of sort of looks like a backdoor approach now, because our emergency management regions, we have 5 of them. And then they said, oh, well, let's do healthcare coalitions. So you're working through your healthcare coalition, which is in these same groups. So they're trying more to partner these things up, but sometimes the state, when they offer these incentives for a town to join a district, they get things that they didn't anticipate, like 2 towns over here grabbing a town about 50 miles away over there. It doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
Okay, so when we have the coalitions, or even as it exists now, and you have certain, the state has certain standards, but each individual health district has some separate standards, so that why would Middletown, shall we say, be any different than Chatham or Ledgelight or any of the other health districts? I mean, why is there not a standardized
They're a lot
protocol or
busier,
requirement for a food truck?
bigger area. If you're using Middletown, it's a bigger area, a lot more food establishments to cook.
I get that.
It should be the same. I'm not saying.
But
they're
why
more
would it
lax.
not be the same?
There are certain things that are
You're
the
right.
same, so under the FDA code, everybody will be following that,
Right.
everybody will have the FDA code form. Even the previous state regulation and the forms for doing the inspections, they had 2 different forms. Actually, they had 3 or 4, didn't they? But they had the red, white, and black form, and then they had the green form, and the green form was the focused food form, and they said everybody should do this because it's the closest thing to the FDA food code. So Chatham has done that for years and gotten well versed in it. We're finding out now where they're trying to go to the FDA food code. There's towns that have been using the red, black, and white form for years, and they're struggling mightily because they've not already made that change that we did. But in answer to your question, because they can, because a district looks at a form and says, well, we're doing beauty salons. State didn't give us a form, I guess we better make one up. So then they go, geez, they didn't even give us a regulation, they just said we have to do it. So they make their own regulation. And then based on what they're seeing for problems, they modify their regulation. Like some places will find out that they're in a strip mall and some of the fumes coming out of these nail salons are awful. And so they put in a whole section on ventilation. Then another town hasn't seen that, so they don't have it. So it's because there was no format given by the state on a lot of these things. Now, the subsurface sewage program, they say, use this form, use that form, or the equivalent. And so generally, that's what people are using is the forms they give.
Zach, are you sure you want to get into this?
So you're taking it all in. And I'll speak from my experience of being a food establishment owner for 14 years in town here, and definitely having my run-ins with the health department to the point that I
Discussions, you have discussions.
discussions, yes, that I've gone to.
Yeah, they were run-ins, what do you think?
Sometimes a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I've gone to, Mark Walters, and had sit-downs with him. I've talked to Don Mitchell when I've had issues, and I will say that Chatham Health has always been very helpful in addressing these issues, whether it was a personnel issue, whether it was questions on the proper way to follow the code, or what does this code exactly mean? Because a lot of times there's areas of gray where it's hard as a business owner to understand what they're asking for exactly, unless you're in this field every day and you understand, exactly what you need to be doing. It got to the point, that Don gave me his cell phone number to get in contact with him when I had issues in the past. One of the things about public health is if it's working properly, you really don't see the results. There's no foodborne outbreaks in town. There's no significant water contamination. It's serving its purpose, but it's hard for the people in the public here to see that. We had an incident this summer where our well pump back in July was struck by lightning. We were given misinformation by the people that were repairing the pump, that they were told us to just let the water run for an hour after they poured chlorine down the well. And they said, oh, you'll be good to go. Luckily, we had a random inspection where they came in and we told them what was going on, and they were making calls to the state instantly. They were helping us. It shut us down for a day and a half, but it saved hundreds of people from getting sick in the community. It's with all the experience that I had over the years, it's just not something that I would have ever, been prepared for. There's just certain things that you can't plan for, that you don't expect. Is running a grocery store, that you're going to run into these issues. But it's just Chatham Health has been there along the way. Anytime I've had a call, with a prompt response from them to help with any situations. And there's been a few headaches, and I've seen it where they come in and they kind of treat you like you're trying to trick the public or you're trying to cheat the system. And I think over the last few years they've made great strides to train the personnel, the sanitaries, the inspectors to come in and to educate the business owner. They require us now to get recertified for our Serve Safe, for our food protection. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Don, but not every district.
The state did not require them, once they got a certificate, it said it's good for 5 years by the testing organization, and the state said it's good forever. We said that we didn't think that was adequate, and that we made it part of our regulation to do every 5 years. Now it's part of the FDA food code, they've got to do it every 5 years.
So that's just, that's an example of something. Yeah, you don't do these things every single day, and there's, things that come up. So it is beneficial that they've been having us go and retake this course. Got a lot out of it.
As a practical matter, if a corporation, whether it's a grocery store or restaurant, doesn't do these things and they have issues, then you have people who are ill, they're going to be out of business. So I don't see it as, when people look at it as if it's where they're at loggerheads or over this stuff, that's poor thinking on the whole thing. I think anyone should look at it as if they're trying to help them have a successful business rather than catch them on some little thing.
Well, I'd also say that Zach and other business people and citizens occasionally will come up with a question that we're stumped. It's like, this doesn't really fit here, doesn't fit here. And what we'll do is call the state and get the final determination from them, because it's their regulations we're enforcing. Everybody says, well, you have a different health code. No, we all have the same health code. Any district you're in is enforcing the same public health code. But when those kind of questions come up, we feel that's part of our service too, is to get the right answer, because if we feel like we're winging it, then we're probably winging it, we should probably ask.
Is there anybody left in the health department? A lot of departments are
Up at the state?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people there. It's not the same feel as it had 15 years ago. I think Steve would attest to that.
It depends which section you're talking about right
Right.
now. And one of the other problems is if you have a job title, you can switch from one section to the other, but that doesn't mean you're
You know
experienced in
anything.
it.
Right.
And so they're trying to plug holes. Right now, the subsurface is the same as it has been for years. Food is down, lead is down. Public water's up to 55 people,
Yeah,
and private water has 2 people.
there you go.
Wow.
So all the wells we deal with, you have 2 people.
And when we started out, the state had a field person down in Norwich for the southeastern part. They had a field person up in Mansfield for the northeast. Those positions are all gone. And that's one of the reasons why the local health departments are basically reaching out to each other, because we're not gonna get the support from the state, so we have to do it amongst ourselves.
We've also offered space in our office to one of our state epidemiologists. There's only, I think, 5 of them.
January, there might be 4.
Okay. So we have one that's
You allowed to
stationed
go
with
up.
us, and we, welcome her there, but she helps us if we have a problem where we need an epidemiologist, which is good. We've just worked out a deal with the town of East Haddam and the town of East Hampton, where we're gonna have an AmeriCorps worker based in our office to work on the opioid crisis. So that's another benefit with the town. And something that John Fournier and Tony McCabe have worked on from down here. And we look forward to that. That should be starting up very soon.
I think if I could, I think that probably from what we've heard, there's certainly the main things is customer service. Obviously, I think what Zach brought up was the point of the difference in, obviously, the personnel you've had over the years. Some of them are easier to work with than others. And I think that goes back probably to management to make sure that whoever you do have in the field out there are given customer service. We're all just trying to do our job out there. I don't care whether it's a guy doing the sewer work or somebody working in the restaurant. They're just trying to do their job, and obviously the health district is doing their job. But I think we all have to treat each other courteously and respectfully. And we've seen it all ways. And I think that if we can, if we do have a problem with someone, if we can get that back to management so that it. So obviously, if you see one, it's one thing. If you see 10 coming in, it's something else. And then obviously, somebody needs to do something different. And obviously, we're also looking at it from this standpoint. If there's a particular individual that's not cooperating with Chatham Health, we want to know about it because we want it to work, and we want it to work for obviously the businesses that are out there. It's important to us. That's what we do. I mean, we're trying to promote business. We're trying to make it as easy as possible to run a business, and I think that that's why this board has been putting this together and bringing it to Emmett's attention and bringing it to the Board of Selectmen's attention. All we do is just advise. That's all. We just want to bring information to the people who basically can do something, but we want to make sure they're aware of it. And so when we have good things going on, we try to get that to them. And when we have something that we think needs attention, we'd like to get that to them. And I think that, from what I've seen at this meeting and others, that certainly if Chatham could have somebody who is basically in this office 3 days a week, so that we do have someone that we can say goes with this office. And I feel like, maybe you think.
Sitting there.
Yeah,
Because quite honestly, we can't afford to have people sit there if there's nothing going on. If you need, certain office hour, that's possible.
Right.
But basically, if they get their paperwork done and they're needed in the field, I really want them out there doing public health.
Yes, and I think we realize that too, but we'd also like to know that on Tuesday mornings, that's the day that someone's going to be in the office, and that we can basically have access, because right now, where do we get questions answered. And I think that have somebody who's, we feel, I mean, I just feel like Steve is in that office and Liz is in a particular office. And I think that, I know you maybe you disagree.
We're everywhere.
Right, but
What I would say is, problems, always let your Board of Health member know, let Emmett know. You can also let the director know at any time. And in terms of if you're not getting service on something you think you need service on, the main office, there's always somebody there to answer that phone. Even when we're not there, I know because it rolls over and it gets me if it's in the middle of the night. So, you can call that number to the main office and we can get somebody on it if there's something of critical importance.
Well, I think, it's typically you've got a plan and you have questions about how a plan could be done. And, or if it comes back with, let's say, questions on that plan that this isn't working, then what are our alternatives? What can we do to make this an approvable plan? And sometimes that takes face-to-face kind of stuff in order to.
It does, and it depends on the complexity of the plan, because sometimes if it's an engineer's design, it's a discussion that has to be had with the engineer.
Yeah.
But you're right, and we certainly welcome that conversation.
Yeah, and I think that that's what we need. Emmett, you want to?
Yeah, I just want to make a few comments. Over the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of, it's hard to put it, inconsistency in terms of what we're getting. When we had Liz here, it was very consistent. We knew exactly what was going to happen, who was going to be here and when. Then it kind of fell apart. And we didn't have any predictable schedule where we knew someone was going to be here. The people who were here didn't necessarily get the level of support they needed. And they ran into problems and confusion, and at least in one case, simply left. Threw up their hands and walked away. We have to know that we're going to have service that's dependable in there, that it's going to be present, it's going to be consistent, it's going to have clarity to what it's doing, and it's going to have the support behind it. I think those are the questions that we're really looking at here today. But we're really focusing largely on the food service and the vendors and perhaps even some of the subsurface work we do, the sewage and whatnot. There's a hell of a lot more to what you're offering than just that.
Absolutely.
And that's the tip of the iceberg. If you look at Everbridge, not every town uses Everbridge. We use it consistently and heavily. Board of Ed more than anyone, but here on the other side, we use it as well. That's a $7,000 or $8,000 a year proposition. If we have to buy it ourselves, you give it to us. Makes a big difference in the cost. If you're going to look at even money, you want to keep that in mind, that there's an extra little peak here that we're going to have to deal with. I'm going to tell you something, we're going to have Everbridge because it serves us well, and we want it. There's issues with mutual aid with the various towns that are other members. We're very dependent upon mutual aid for our ambulance service, for our fire service. These are our friends, the ones we work with, the ones we know right now. I don't want to lose that because regaining is going to be tough. A couple of other things, I've got some letters here, I commented on them earlier, and I'd like to read them to you because they touch on other things that you're doing. And this is from the property owners of Lake Hayward. Dear Mr. Lyman, Thursday, November 1, Don Mitchell, Director of Health, contacted me from our discussion. I understand the town of East Haddam is considering leaving Chatham Health and joining Connecticut River. As Secretary of the Property Owners Association of Lake Hayward, I want to take the opportunity to tell you about the benefits Chatham Health District has provided. Don has been a champion of weekly water testing for the 3 beaches at Lake Hayward. With our voluntary water collection, CHG is providing an umbrella of services. They include transport, samples to Middletown Weekly, coordination of beach closures, reporting back to the E. coli levels of samples taken. I'm just going to touch on some of this. Forwards photos, questions to the state for further explanation of water conditions. We're extremely thankful for the thorough septic system program covering new properties, additions and property sales. You know, I'm the guy that gets it when nobody's in the office. I hear about it. I'm also the guy that gets it when some system fails. And they come back to me and say, well, wasn't that system inspected properly? Wasn't it done and brought up to snuff? It's very important. And I can tell you, I do get those beatings. People come to us and say, you know what? It wasn't done right. The town's responsible. You should have inspected it more carefully. We want to make sure it's done properly. With 400 homes and summer properties close to the lake, many built in the first half of the 20th century, the Chatham Health Septic System Program helps us to keep our lake clean. Keeps the lake clean, beautiful, healthy. It's a little bit different from the rest of what we hear about. And I can repeat that with the Lake Association. This is from Felicia Tenza and Randy Miller. We worked at Chatham Health District and Don Mitchell regularly in recent years, both on questions regarding our residents, on behalf of the lake communities of East Haddam. It's to support the many services they provide in a professional manner. Greatly appreciate that Don and his team do not cut corners. They do things right for the right reasons. Without their continuous commitment to enhancing our local area, health standards and enforcement in our communities would easily diminish. Don is consistent, responsive to inquiries that we make, available to attend meetings. We hardly endorse the Chatham Health District. The service level that the lakes are getting is terrific. And that's something that's fairly unique to us. And a health district from another area with another orientation might not provide that as well. And the one that impressed me the most, a little bit long here, so I'll try to just jump through it. I'm sorry I couldn't attend tonight, but I submitted this letter in reference to the topic of changing to another health district. This is from Craig Mansfield, our emergency management. And they're a little bit disappointed that EDC, in researching other options, did not reach out to consult with emergency management as well as other town departments. Since joining the health district, East Haddam Emergency Management built an excellent working relationship with Chatham Health. They've taken the requirement of supporting emergency management function very seriously, shown in our ability to respond to different events over the last 13 years. Several years ago, Chatham Health created an emergency preparedness planning group. It consists of the district emergency management directors, several members of the Chatham staff. In the beginning, they came together on a regular basis and created the necessary checklists, templates, response plans, call trees to be able to respond to health emergencies within each of our communities. After the creation of these response plans, the group looked to the equipment and supplies that would be required. Quickly determined purchasing them would have been a substantial hit to East Haddam's annual emergency budget. Realizing the effect, Chatham stepped up, funded the purchase of the required supplies and equipment. The pre-planning proved invaluable almost immediately. A large section of the country was hit with the H1N1 virus. East Haddam Emergency Management was able to quickly take the created pandemic plan, work with Chatham Health, provide our residents with multiple flu clinics, reduce the spread of the virus. And he goes on to speak of the Everbridge system. This is your mass notification. And it's a great system. We can draw a line in the town, and bingo, those are the people who are going to get called. We can identify people from the school community who need to be called. It's a terrific tool, a powerful one for us. We just can't afford to lose it. We're just too used to it. Chatham Health is supporting East Haddam through a recovery phase from several weather events, provided training, participated in town's required annual exercises. In closing, I can't speak of the many other functions Chatham Health provides the community, but can say that these are just a few examples of what Chatham has provided through the years. There's a whole lot more to Chatham than just, the food services, the vendors, doing the septic systems, and they're all part and parcel of what we get from them. And the deal is good. And when you look at the actual dollar cost, the comparable value, speaking of the Connecticut River area, about comparable, except we have to add on the cost of Everbridge now, which pushes it up considerably. And if dollars are the only answer, we need to be looking at Uncas or Ledge Light. They're half the cost for both the Connecticut River area and Chatham. We need to look at the services. What are we getting from them? You know, what are we paying for, and what's the return on our investment? There's a whole lot more going on here than just the cost. And the big key right now is providing the service in a timely fashion that is really well directed with the support staff that they need, that whoever's on staff here, and knowing when we can depend on them being here, and knowing that they'll be consistent, and knowing that they're going to be fair about what they do. Laurie?
I'd just like to say, from the perspective of East Haddam Ambulance, our mutual aids that Emmett mentioned, and our working relationship as far as working with East Hampton, Colchester, and the surrounding towns, those are our people. And when we look at what happened to our KX dispatch center, when people started jumping ship from KX and it dissolved, and we ended up having to go to a different dispatch agency in Valley Shore, we're not getting the service from them that we got from KX, from our group that was familiar with us and that took good care of us, and it was a great area. And that's why I would really be hesitant to go jumping ship real quickly to go someplace else where somebody might not have the familiarity and our group. It's always East Hampton, Colchester, East Haddam, all these towns that always work together, and they do it fairly well. And I've always been impressed with what Chatham has offered to the town of East Haddam. So I'd feel much better if we stuck there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else out there to comment? Eric?
So, as you know, I've been a big proponent of getting out of Chatham for
Oh, you
as
know
long
that.
as you can probably remember me speaking. So I'm gonna disagree with Mr. Tierney on a couple things. As far as, basically, let me start with Mr. Venture first. Because when we talk about having the same person in there all the time in the office and whatnot, so if a person goes in there and applies for a subsurface septic system, okay, they approve it, it goes through zoning, gets approved, it's done, it's a done deal. That entity goes back months later, reapplies, it's another fee, the same fee that you paid at the initial onset. Okay, it just, I have a standing joke with Liz, basically I'll pay you $500 a year, and whether we do anything or not, it's gonna go to that building fee.
Now you're speaking of a business at this point.
I'm speaking of a business,
Yeah.
correct. And again, my experience goes basically not to the food services, it's basically the subsurface and to the wells and so forth. So just today, I mean, and probably I shouldn't be bringing it up now, but I had an appointment to have an inspection for a well today, 1 o'clock. No one showed. In stone, 1 o'clock. Not even a phone call. So when we talk about services, and again, I'm not gonna say, Andy, you and I know each other, but.
Yeah, no, it's good. Well, this is what-
But Don,
let
you
me
come highly
know.
recommended, I mean, as far as your reputation and so forth, so I'm not, this is not personal.
No, but let
This
me
is-
know when you have something like that.
This
We have
is
to fix
basically with the entity. I think the town of East Haddam is much better served with an individual that can serve the town of East Haddam. I want that person in that office regardless, and this is where I come to your comment, regardless of 3 days a week, if we're gonna pay 6 figures a year, I want that person sitting in that office 40 hours a week, because I'm gonna tell you something, I sit in my office and I don't make 6 figures.
But
So-
if you have a sanitarian, you're gonna pay a sanitarian, but a sanitarian can't work unless they're working under a director of health.
Okay?
So you're gonna pay a director
An MD.
of health too.
Or an MD.
The MD is a possibility, the state is hesitant these days, but they'll look at it.
I guess my point is, and again, this is not personal, this comes from a dollars and cents point of view. We're paying 6 figures. I would much rather go back to the days, and I always use Wayne Green as the example. He served this town and this community as a building inspector and a sanitarian, was knowledgeable immensely in both subjects, and served it with a great deal of integrity and a great deal of vested interest, if you will. He wasn't from this town, but he served it with a vested interest. He served it as an intelligent person. We've had other people come and go who have not had that sense of responsibility. So I'm remiss if I never said anything, because again, I come selectmen's meetings, you know, for years now, and have never said my piece in a forum like this. And you're right, I probably should have gone to Chatham directly and said, hey, here's my piece, and so forth, but.
I'm gonna give you my cell number too, so I really.
But still, I'm speaking as a resident of the town of East Haddam. I want to be served as the town of East Haddam. When I call Chatham Health or the building department, I want somebody there. I don't care what time of day it is, within business hours. Thank you very much.
Work at the Consumer Reports Center.
I just don't, I mean, the only thing I can say is going back to the way that things were, you're gonna be bucking what the state health department is pushing all the towns. You know,
That may be the way we're going, but as far as my opinion is, let's hold out for as long as we possibly can, and then
yeah, but you have
do
to,
that knee-jerk
you have
reaction
to realize
later.
that even before you can hold out, they have to approve it.
So,
They have to approve it before you can even hold out.
but maybe this is not a discussion for right now, and I don't want to waste anybody's
Right.
time having a.
But I think, you know, you brought up a point, and certainly the point of not keeping inspections and not showing up, which is the worst. It's
And
one
again,
thing
that's-
if.
This is not the forum maybe to
No,
bring that up,
no.
but it's a frustration that I have. that-
Well, I think in general, though, it isn't like you're the only one, Eric. And so I think that when we do have a situation like that, what do we do? Andy, what should we do when we basically have somebody who doesn't show up at all and no phone
That's
call?
not a good thing, and Eric brought up a very valid point. If you had an appointment today, and somebody didn't show up, then shame on us, that shouldn't be happening. So we apologize for that, and Don will look into that tomorrow. But that shouldn't be happening, and if it's happening more than just today, then we're not doing our job, and that's unacceptable. As far as a manager of a town, not a first selectman, 23 years, I left here in 96, I've been over there ever since. To get a sanitarian and to get a director of health, you're way more than you're paying now. I had a full-time sanitarian, and we had an MD doing it. And you're talking at least $130,000. You're not paying that to Chatham Health, and you're getting all these other services. Portland, you guys, this is regional. So when you sign up to be a district health district, you're gonna get somebody from the district. You're not gonna get somebody from down the bridge or here. You should have office hours, no disputing that. Town of Hebron had the #1 chief sanitarian, and we went from 40 hours a week, which he enjoyed, and trust me, I agree with you, because I enjoyed it.
Right.
And every time I call Steve, he's down here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Steve, you gonna come to a staff meeting once a year? So, we get it, but he shouldn't, I don't know about the fee thing, he shouldn't be paying the application
No,
fee.
an application fee should be good for a year.
Yeah.
So you should not have to pay it again.
Which
So that's what I would wanna know.
sensed a little bit of dissatisfaction to, but are you willing to prorate? If we're gonna pay 6 figures a year, are you willing to prorate for how much that person's in the office and doing their job?
We'll work with your representative on the board. Everybody, every town that belongs to the district has a say at that table. And as Don said, you should have a designated person. And we did have a problem with the person, Liz leaving, and that person took over, didn't stay. So we apologize for that. We've hired new. And it's gonna take a little time. But you should have repetitive service from the same person. And we're looking to do that. It just, we had a little bit of an issue in the last 6 months. We went out, people didn't apply, we went out and we got somebody finally to come in. Having 6 towns, we've had issues in Colchester similar, we've repaired those and they're up and running. East Hampton, I'm not here to call it our problem children, but East Hampton's a constant moving target with many different facets that we're always putting fires out. Incomplete plans, hey, Chatham Health's holding up economic development. We look into it, and all of a sudden, the plan's got the well in 2 different areas, and the property line was in the first plan's gone on the second plan. So, Nobody loves, Bob Casner, nobody loves a regulatory agency. But we take the hit for a lot of stuff, but like, he shouldn't be paying a double fee, so we're gonna look into that. That should not happen. It's good for a year. And I'm gonna tell you, as the board chair for the past 4 years, I've not really heard too many people not making their appointments. So that's concerning to me here as the chairman of the board.
The only thing I'd ask on that fee was one of them a plan review and one was the actual septic permit, because you get a plan review and that's.
That would have been a plan review that would have gone before P and Z.
That was a plan review. Then when there's the actual installation, there's.
Well, when I have my engineer saying that's BS because we've already done that, but whatever, we're not gonna go there.
No, thank you for letting us know.
Could I just make, just to follow up on a little bit what you were saying, I think too, that when you have an inspector start with a plan, that inspector stays with the plan. And also when that inspector has worked with the plan, they also do the field. And you don't do one of the inspections in the field and then we have somebody else who comes out in the field. That is awkward for everybody and we don't agree. And then where are we? And then we're upset. So, but if you stay with the same person who reviews it and the same person who basically comes out into the field and does one, I don't care whether it's scarification or basically the final, whatever it is, we need to stay with the same inspector. And it would be so
That
helpful.
slows things down. For instance, if you start a job with me, and I do the scarification, and I'm at training when you're looking for a final, rather than wait for me, somebody else can go down and that speeds up the process.
Yep.
So we don't want to hard and fast, but as Jim said, when somebody starts with it, the intention is for that same person to stay with it. If there's an overlapping where a job started with somebody who left, then obviously a second person picks it up. But it's, Jim and Nancy are trying to make sure that one person stays with the project. But when it comes out in the field, obviously, if somebody's looking for something that I started and I say I'm not around, somebody else can fill in.
And I think that's totally understandable. But if basically, if you're in the office and you're available, it just helps for consistency to stay with the same
And I try and
person.
tell people when things are on the phone sometimes to make sure that you ask for me because I'm the one you're talking to.
Right. And it's just the idea though that it makes it easier so when we're out there, we're not starting from scratch when we're on a final.
And with the efficiencies of modern technology, entire files could be sent to us in seconds.
Yep.
You know, when I can look at them on my phone.
Most contractors have our cell numbers, which are not supposed to give out, and we give them out routinely. Just because we want people to call us, because if I'm going from A to B and you're in between, I want to hit you on the way through.
Right. It makes it better for all of us, that's for sure.
And that was my question, when somebody like Eric or John Q. Business has an issue, where do they go? Do they go to Chatham Health? Do they go to Emmett? Do they go to the economic? We need to streamline and get a process in place where people can get things so they can be taken care of instead of, you wouldn't have found out about Eric unless
No, they
he was
would've.
here tonight. Yeah, but would Andy have heard it? Probably not. He wouldn't have
Probably
been aware
not.
of it.
Definitely not.
Okay, yeah, so we just need to make sure that there's a clear process for
If there's
people.
something that keeps being a repetitive problem, I mean, yes, still let me know, but then let your Board of Health representative know, because he's gonna take it before the whole board. But generally, the buck stops here. It should come to the director.
And I just have one, getting into revenues. The pump out fee has always been an irritant for every homeowner.
Me too, it's going away. It's
Gone.
going away.
So it is off of
Such
the,
a deal today. Come on.
it's gone? Okay, because that has certainly been an irritation point.
Never right to begin with.
Yes, right, and,
I've been working on that for some time and it will be gone.
good, okay, because I think that.
And just so you, transparency, you guys know, we wanted that to go away. We were hoping the salon regulation was gonna come into place to offset the revenue, to keep the district running the way it is. But we're not there yet, but we understand it's a burden. We don't agree with it, we're gonna.
Okay, and just on your whole revenue side, do you feel that you're going to be stable with the fee structures, or is?
We're gonna be having a meeting tomorrow with the Board of Health. Some of the fees are gonna be changing for those new classifications on the restaurants.
Yep.
Number of the fees will probably raise minimal amount, like $5, something like that. Some of them won't change at all. But just so you know, for example, our B100As that we're talking about, we're talking about $60 or $45, even if they go to 65 and 50. Connecticut River area, they're 100. They're substantially more. I mean, we could even put the permit to discharge in and still be less. But we're not gonna have that permit to discharge fee. The per capita you mentioned for them was $11. Officially with the state, they're $11.40. So they may decide they're gonna lower, but they're not lower. They're a good amount more, 29 cents more per capita right now.
Mhm.
So that, a little disingenuous for them to say that's their fee when it's not their fee.
They said that's gonna be their fee for the coming year. That's what they said.
We're all faced with the state of Connecticut, there's a statute that says they're gonna give you this much. That's unknown lately, sometimes they don't follow that. We've lost some grants, not that the Chatham Health District has lost, they've been taken away. That was revenue that we could count on in multiple areas. And it would support Everbridge, or the health nurse, and a lot of other areas with the financial situation of the state. It's a trickle down to the health districts.
How much of the percentage of your income is state generated?
How much of that per capita now?
Let's see, we've got about a little over 100,000 that comes in on the per capita from the state, and then probably got another 50,000 or so in other grants, so 15%.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so it's not, I mean, basically it's the towns that fund this, and it's not the state that's funding this.
That is correct.
Just one more question. What happens if one more town drops out? The rest of the remaining towns are gonna be left with the burden of the,
Yeah, or, and I'm also gonna be left with the burden of finding somebody.
Well, we don't know. It could, to answer the question appropriately tonight, we don't know what that would do. It could dissolve
which
it.
is fair.
It could dissolve it, or we would have to reorganize it and look at probably layoff and some help to, that's if the other towns wanted to remain.
Correct.
I mean, if one town were to leave, I think other towns would consider their options at the time. They would weigh their options. Like I said, I don't know if it came out, and I'm not trying to sell it. It's just, these are the facts that I supplied. Craig Mansfield wrote that letter, and I'm not siding with one to promote or demote. It's just a fact. East Haddam changed their DEMIS. Their DEMIS is the regional emergency district area to align with the other towns in the health district, other than Colchester, because they're in a different one because of where they are. So a lot of stuff happened when we formed it, as Steve said, and even if the state starts to regionalize, we did this to be kind of set up. So I'm trying to lock you into the thing, but all those things would have to be considered if one town were to leave. Okay, what do we do with our DEMIS regioning? Where's the other health district? Because when things come down from the state, they go through a lot of times as EOCs, which is emergency, and if you're not aligned, it affects your town in different ways. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't weigh your options or your chance to move. But there's a lot of other moving parts that East Haddam has to look at, and then the other surrounding towns. So to be quite honest, it could break the district, but that would be the worst case scenario. If it didn't, the other towns, like myself, I'm in Hebron, I got one right next door. I'm staying because I want to see it work. We've got a plan to change and make it better and try to deal with the concerns. I have some concerns, some of the other towns have concerns that have been taken care of. So we're down here to take care of East Haddam. We hope you guys stay, but that's a valid question, but I don't think we have an answer tonight for that, do we, Don? I think it's.
No, I wouldn't expect one. You can't answer.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
necessarily
I will
answer.
tell you this, there's, even with Killingworth, going out and saying to other health districts, make a play for us. They asked Chatham. And I said I would take it to the Board of Health. I said, but personally, I said, it doesn't make sense. It's on the other side of the river. It's quite a separation, and it doesn't make good logistical sense. When somebody takes them, they'll get $15,000 for that first year, which will let somebody drop their rate, and then the next year, they're not gonna get that 15,000, and bang, it goes up again.
And then the office hours went down,
In the
and
meantime.
the day, there was no other sanitarian backup from the district. We're in there.
meantime,
3 days with 2 hours a
Ledgely
day.
Health District was asked if they wanted Killingworth, and they said, we just expanded by 5 towns, we can't get sanitarians that we need right now, we're not interested in getting anybody. When places expand rapidly, they're gonna be in that thing, and believe me, even if they've got money, they can't just grab sanitarians, they're not growing on trees. So it's not that easy. When you talk about our emergency preparedness, East Haddam is well set up and prepared for within our management area. They would be going to another different one. Everything would be new, different. Is it good, bad, ugly? I have no idea. But some of the other towns that have joined CRAHD have found their hours gone to crap. Haddam has 2 days a week for 2 hours. That's not just in the office, that's office and field. Chester has 2 days a week for 3 hours. Same deal, and 1 Tuesday a month. So you're talking about, will you have a fanny in the seat all these times? You're not gonna have it with these others. And you shouldn't be fooled into thinking that, but we're looking to provide as much coverage as possible. And it may surprise you to find that we've got, 5 people in town working at one time. If there's a GI outbreak of some kind at, say, Chest Elm or something, we're there. We have to be there in force, we have to take food histories, we have a lot of work to do. So when these things come up, we're there.
Don had a question here.
Yeah, we're looking at cost, so we always gotta look at best value for the dollar, not just the cost itself. Is there a self-assessment of performance that you could share with us? For example, I'm listening to how problematic the staffing is, so it's clear that we're not doing everything 100% that we should be doing. For example, the federal and their state mandates on inspections and how many times the food establishment needs to be inspected that year. How well are we doing with the staffing that currently exists? Are we at 60%, 50%?
You're 60 plus.
So it's a concern.
Yeah.
And where's the resolution?
Part of the resolution is under the new FDA standard, there'll be less required, so if we're keeping around the same number, we're gonna be more inclined to be meeting it. I think the FDA standard is a little more realistic than the other. So we will look better percentage-wise. Will we be 100%? I hope so. We'll have to wait and see.
I think standardization of fees and what your fee structure is gonna be important. In some inspections, it's jumped considerably over last year. I can give you an example.
Go ahead.
Pool inspections.
Yeah.
Were $60,
Yep.
jumped to 100,
Yep.
70%.
That's because they were flat for forever.
Well, I understand why, but
Well,
it's gotta be justified.
That's how health districts get in trouble too.
Right.
They don't change their fees for 10, 15 years, and then when they change them, they hurt. We're trying to look at that now and say, rather make small increments a little more frequently than a big one every.
Make them visible so that where people can look it up and know ahead of time what it's gonna be
speaking
and not
of
find
which,
out that it changed when it happens. Also,
How do you find the district fees on some of the districts?
compatible,
You go to our
close.
website, you can find it.
Yeah,
Try finding it for one you're considering.
the availability of personnel, and that's been a thing here in town, is coming up with some sort of schedule. If it's only gonna be Tuesday and Thursday, that's fine, if it's posted and the person's available. And they don't necessarily have to be sitting in the office. Every one of us that has a business does business on a cell phone.
Sure.
That's where everything's done, because you can't afford to sit in the office. So, but establishing standards and maintaining them, it's gonna be important for the
Yeah,
integrity
some
of you
the
guys
ideas
in
on the
town.
hours too, we need to get
Yeah.
together with Jim Ventris
Uh,
and Nancy and talk about what works best.
uh,
I hear you.
Okay. Anything else? Starting to get a little late here.
No.
Eddie?
I thought this was a great session, thanks for having this. I would like to hear from other health districts as to, we've heard from Chatham Health what they're proposing, and your point about scope of services, we should definitely have a written scope of services to hold whoever the health district is to their feet to the fire. I'm sorry, Andy.
No problem.
But we heard this 3 years ago. We've had our issues, and it's gonna get better. We're correcting. We're gonna solve the employment problem. We heard it 3 years ago, and it hasn't changed. Are we gonna sit here next year and hear it again? And I don't wanna see Chatham Health District go bust. But the town needs to be served. The townspeople need to be served. If a business is gonna open and they need to get their health permit signed off, they need to get their health permit signed off. They don't wanna hear that, well, we can't find an employee.
Yeah.
So I know time is of the essence, but I behoove you to have the other health districts that you're considering come in and make a presentation as well as to what they can offer. Everbridge is a very important issue. And I don't know how you solve that problem.
Well, both districts have that. Both districts, it's available in the shoreline too.
The price line that's on for Everbridge that we have on our list is one that's shared by 6 towns. So it's, we don't,
Now,
it's not our whole
Portland,
thing.
there's a couple, if I may correct you,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be,
No, please do,
contradictory, but
absolutely.
there's a couple towns in the Chatham Health District that have their own police departments, so they don't use it at all. Portland being one of them, and I don't think Colchester uses it either. And
But that's not our whole nut though. That whole nut is not for us, it's split up.
No, but it is something that we negotiated down a huge amount.
Yeah, I think you would.
That is what it would
pay around
cost
that
us.
to go out on your own, but that could be
Yeah,
reviewed.
but it's available as.
We're just saying that's one of the
Yeah.
monetary services we give you for being in the district that other towns look the other way because they don't benefit by it.
Mm.
You need to look at what other districts have, because they may not have it. They may not have anything comparable. Or they may.
I think what Ed has to bring to the table here is that, we should have other districts come in as well and talk to us about what they offer and what services they have. And I think if we're comparing apples to apples, that makes sense as far as the scope of work that Jim has brought up. I do know that we've talked to, I was former head of the EHBA prior to Jess, and I had plenty of situations and plenty of times where businesses came to us in regards to the Taste of East Haddam when we first started it, as well as other scenarios. Myself, I was GC'd a building here in town and had to deal with the health district, and it was a very terrible situation. It really was. It was awful. And not that I didn't know what I was doing, because I certainly didn't, but the kind of customer service, I've been in customer service and sales for a long time, and I have never dealt with somebody who was so awful. And I know that there have been other people in town and other businesses in town, and I even know businesses today who have said, contractors who have said, they do not want to do business in East Haddam because they have to deal with Chatham Health. So whatever that scenario is, I understand we're fixing it. But the bottom line is that as the Economic Development Commission in town, we have been asked to put together, what do we see as which way should we go? This is not something that we just said we have we're going to take up a crusade here. We want businesses to open in East Haddam, and we have to make it easy for those businesses to open. And part of it is dealing with the regulation. And of those regulations, the Chatham Health is part of it. So in order to make that work, we have to find a happy medium here to have partners with the economic development that happens in town. And that goes through the town and land use and zoning and Chatham Health and the Selectmen's office. We all have to work together to build our town. And part of building our town is to make it comfortable, easy, a pleasure to deal with and open up a business. And we can't make it difficult for people. So whether it's Chatham Health or land use or the Selectmen's office or Economic Development Commission, we can't put roadblocks in people's way. And that's one thing that we really do have to concentrate on, making sure that we've got the best partners in building our town. So I strongly encourage all of us to consider Ed's idea to bring, another health district in that we're looking at. Obviously, we all know who we're talking about, but they should come in and we should have the same discussion, the same people in the room, and then we can have an intelligent, figure out which way is the better way to do it. But I don't think that this is something that we should just keep doing. And we've, it's the definition of insanity, folks. We know what that is. We keep doing the same thing and it's still not working. So we've got to figure this out. And if Chatham's going to come around and fix it, great. But if somebody can do it better for the same amount of money, I think it's worth talking about, and I think it's worth looking at.
Okay. Now, here's the problem that I have. First place, I want to say that this is really the first time it's come to head where I've been dragged in to say, let's talk about something. Maybe you guys should have talked to me in 2015, 2016, 2017. For someone that has to work with daily business with them. So this is, starting now. So we've all clearly identified staff time as the problem. Without staff time, we're in trouble. So that they said they're going to do, and believe me, I'll be on top of them holding their fire. If someone's not down there at a certain period of time that we agree upon, I'll make the phone call myself. Because I understand that is very important. Because it's nothing better, and I'm not doing too well in the building department either. We're not staff time there either. So I'm answering a lot of questions on my own. It works great when you have all three partners right there to work with somebody. Now, when it comes to a food service plan for a restaurant, those answers are going to be the same no matter what health district you get. You have to have the same components on that plan no matter which district you work with. So that answer is going to be the same whoever you interview. Food service plan is a food service plan. Things about this thick, you go through it page by page. I know because I've done them. I also know from my previous business, I've seen it all when it comes to restaurants and operations and health. So that being said, go and interview people and say, well, what are you going to provide with us? They're going to say the same thing, well, we're going to provide you, but they're not going to change what a food service plan is. They're not going to change what a septic system installation is. It's all math, it's all science, it's all, plan preparation. I also, don't want to sit through here and listen to song and dance from 2, 3, 4 other districts. If you want to say to them, submit us what your standard contract with the other town is and your level of services, and you want to get together and you want to call myself in and your group and Selectmen, and we look at those standard contracts, see what the service is provided. We don't have to sit down night after night, listen to song and dance. I'd be more than willing to do that. Right now, I think our key thing is level of service, provide timely service.
Well, Jim, if I could interrupt you, that is, the administrative part of it. We also have where it's in the field part of it. And that's the part where we seem to see the weaknesses. And I don't think it's, as you say, a septic system's a septic system. Right. Guess what? But I think when it comes to going out in the field and basically the personality that comes out in the field and the cooperativeness that's out in the field, I think that's where we can see there could be some improvements made.
Well, I think you made that loud and clear tonight. And I think that you've got the chairman and you've got the staff here.
Yeah.
It's loud and clear.
And I think, and certainly, we all appreciate, Andy, you coming, Don, you coming, Steve, you're being here. I think that this has given us the opportunity where we can show you some of the concerns and basically see from what it's like from the business association, what it's like from economic development situations, and so that you can see what we deal with, and so that you can hopefully make the improvements on your side that'll make it easier for all of us. And it'll make it easier in the office, it'll make it easier hopefully in the field. And I think that I would certainly personally and certainly as the board appreciate you coming tonight and being willing to share with us, and hopefully we've given you some ideas. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. I just want to thank everyone who came here tonight. When I put this together, I had anticipated it was basically going to be the economic development and Chatham Health, and perhaps the Selectmen as well, and that's going to be all of it. it's turned into quite a bit more than I'd ever anticipated. And I think we've brought up a number of issues that absolutely have to be addressed. I think everybody's much more aware of what's going on at this point. And I want to thank you. Any more comments out there?
No, I'm not here as a salesman for Chatham Health. I represent a town myself. I'm born and raised here, so I have a fond spot in my heart for East Hampton. You guys run the town of East Hampton. You gotta do what's in your best interest. As the chairman of the board, and you sit on the board with me, we thought, at least Bob, when you started with your list at the beginning of the meeting, I think, not to pick on Mr. Jezik, but he was one of the issues that we were dealing with, and I thought we came down and rectified that back then, so. I'm not trying to throw a last minute sales pitch, but I kind of thought we listened, we heard, and we fixed that. And now we have another issue with personnel, and we've already taken steps to fix that. But that being said, I gotta disagree with the business because it goes both ways. And I'm not saying that you probably didn't have a bad situation. But as the chairman of the board, I've also defended Militia Zebra and sticking up for a business in East Hampton that said we held them up and we're ruining economic development, and they never submitted a permit. So we can't hold somebody up if they don't, so it goes both ways. And we're getting that kind of stuff too, and that was publicized in the newspaper. And I personally had to call her, who I consider a friend, and say, Melissa, that's not really the case here. I said, you're looking a little bit in front of this. We really, he was using an engineering firm, and there was some miscommunication. They never submitted. He was frustrated with the process, but where I'm going with this is we're not having a lot of, and Emmett, you're at the meetings, Don and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. If East Hampton is our problem, then we need to focus down there, and you'll get my commitment now that I'm hearing these types of problems. Because I'm not dealing with these in Hebron. You know, and I get 10,000 people over there, and I'm not having these issues, and I really sincere when I say I don't see Steve that often. I mean, he shows up in the morning, gets in the car, checks the office, then he's gone. So if that's going on here, we gotta fix it.
Well, it sounds like just give us Steve and we'll be all
I
set.
But it's just, I'm in it with you guys in another municipality.
Yep.
I talked to Portland, they're willing to stay. I talked to East Hampton, they've had some wrinkles in the road on both sides of the fence with some overzealous contractors that weren't really supplying stuff that we could even make an approval on. Stuff that they didn't, they put in, I don't mean to go into particulars, but they're putting a new dollar store in, they never even came us with a well diagram, and they went open. I'm like, that's our fault. So it's a give and take.
Yes.
And we're not pointing fingers. No matter who or when you bring it to us, we'll hit the ground running. And we've been dealing with a contractor up in East Hampton. I think he's finally seen that. But we were getting hauled in by the council up there, and these developers that we're no good, but we sat down calmly and professionally. We went through it piece by piece and said, you know, hey, we really didn't get what we needed. Here's the first print. Here's the second one. We don't want to point any fingers, but so we're dealing with a little bit of that too, but not to where we want anybody else to leave the district. And I personally from Hebron would love to have you guys stay, but if it's not working out for you or you or you or you or you, you gotta weigh those options. But I don't know, and I'm not picking on Don, but I can because he's under me here. We do have a standard, and with the food service, we did have a problem with that, but I was under the impression we corrected that, and we get a report. I mean, we were close to 90% a year ago, so we brought somebody in, we put somebody in there full-time.
Yep.
We were really concerned about the ones that were failing, not having a repeat inspection, so we made sure that we did that more than just the average inspections. But now with the change in the regulations, the visits are gonna be less, so it'll even out, but we've stepped that way up.
And the person that we've got to come in is strong in food, recognize that we needed more strength there.
So the report card is we're financially much more stable. We hired new employees. The food inspections are way up from what they were. And I think, Bob, to your opening statements, and Mr. Jezik can speak differently, I thought we came down with a full court press and tried to work and fix that business situation back then. And I thought we walked away from here with wiping the slate clean. So maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I think that it certainly, there's issues out there, but I think that a lot of it is what we saw. I hear about it from the stuff in the field. I mean, that's, I talk to contractors, so I hear about it from that standpoint. And so, there's weaknesses in the areas out there. But I think that certainly having the three of you here from the district is great, because now you know what the issues are. And so knowing that, that's the first thing you need to do in order to straighten it out. If we don't know what they are, then we don't know how to fix them, or we don't get them fixed. And I think that,
When you came in with Irene and you told me about a personality issue, we took care of that.
Immediately.
So it wasn't like we're not listening.
Yeah.
We continue to listen.
yeah, and I think that, and as we go on here, let's see if we can't keep that good rapport
There's
going.
some good
Yeah, and
things.
I think that when I first heard about the serious situation down here, I called you up to meet with you and discuss things. And I think that we came away from it with a general agreement of what some of the issues are, and that honestly, that it should be easily fixable. It really should be easily fixable. A lot of the things that I'm hearing today, I can't fix it. This is the first time I'm hearing about them. It's difficult to hear about things from a couple of years ago or whatever, and I have no knowledge of because I can't speak to them. So that makes it difficult for me. So actually having a more open communication will definitely help.
And as we work with this, and we can keep some communication going back and forth between the director and certainly have something going on, and of course with our representative who can take and bring this up to the board, and so that you can hear it directly from the board. But I think there are two things here: the communications we need to improve, and we need to certainly see how we can do better education so that we can hopefully alleviate some of those problems that are out there. And it's the old story. Usually education, and expose them to it, and tell how to make out these forms and what forms we got to do and when we got to do it, and as much as standardized as we can is helpful to all of us. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you very much, and appreciate everybody's time, and I think that we accomplished something tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Make a motion to adjourn?
I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
We need a second over here.
I'll second.
Go second it, okay.